reactions have continued to trail Friday's designation of bandits in Nigeria as terrorists by the Federal High Court Abuja following a motion filed by the Federal Ministry of Justice in a ruling delivered by Justice Taiwo Taiwo. The court said since activities of bandit groups constitute acts of terrorism, they should be designated as terrorist. But popular scholar Sheikh Ahmad Gumi noted that the court declaration would not change anything, describing it as a mere political expediency. He said the development is an indication that the federal government has succumbed to media blackmail. Meanwhile, the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice says it is already working in collaboration with other government agencies to take full advantage of that declaration. And joining us right now to discuss the import of the court judgment and how it is expected to affect the government's effort to stamp out banditry is Dr. Kabiru Adamu, a security analyst. Good to have you with us. Now, if I may start, what's in the name? Whether you choose to call bandits terrorists, how does that change current efforts towards combating these criminals for good?
Good afternoon, and I hope you're having a good weekend. So we are guided by laws, and the desire and our hope is that every action we take have some form of backing by our laws. Now I'll leave the crux of the legal matters to the lawyers to discuss, but from a security point of view, there are two issues that have vital importance here. The Terrorism Prevention Act, as amended 2013, which requires that a competent court of jurisdiction is to classify or declare any group or any individual as terrorist. No other competent body within the country has that authority. Now that has happened. The second instrument that is of importance to me as a security practitioner is the Terrorism Prevention Act, which was passed, I think, in 2014 and then amended in 2016. Now, I am hoping that after this declaration by a court, the security agencies within the country will now pick up the requirements of that Terrorism Prevention Act and the counter-terrorism policy that we have, which is domiciled in the Office of the National Security Advisor, and implement the provisions of that counter-terrorism act. And I'll give you some instances. Number one, I expect to hear the name and the membership of those two groups that were mentioned in that court ruling. I would expect to hear how they are generating their funding. I would expect to hear if they have any international support. Now, all of this are what the security agencies will now attempt to either block or, in certain instances, to arrest and prosecute as required by the provisions of those two documents that I mentioned.
Right. Okay. So with this new redesignation, what is likely to change?
So like I indicated, if before the security agencies were treating these groups as groups that perhaps were not terrorist groups and so were not captured under this Terrorism Prevention Act, now they have to treat them as terrorist groups. And I gave the example of their membership. We would expect that immediately once this has been gazetted, the membership will be declared. Who are those that are members of this group? Frankly, I mean, I'm a security practitioner and I don't know who they are. So I'm a little bit surprised. We are hoping that the security agencies have this knowledge and they will quickly move in to arrest them or whatever, if they resist arrest, for instance, they do whatever the law says they should do to them. So those are the kind of things that I'm hoping to follow. Implementation of the provisions of both the Counter-Terrorism Prevention Act as well as the counter-terrorism strategy. Now, it's important to mention that law enforcement is a key component of every organized society. So if you have a group that is declared as terrorist, the next thing that would happen would be to treat them as such. It would be quite unfortunate if we have this situation and then we don't go ahead and not just arrest them, but to prosecute them, because what it would amount to is, something like a toothless dog. We've declared them terrorists, but we've not arrested them or we've not prosecuted them. So it would be really, really crucial that all these 27 ministries, departments, and agencies in government that have responsibility for law enforcement and for the provision of security in different forms should now come together identify the membership of this group, and then go ahead and prosecute them.
Interesting, you still mentioned the issue of implementation of that idea, but when you add legal support to fend off criminal activities, as it were, how does that translate to realistic and physical implementation and enforcement, as it were? Isn't it time we start to think outside of the box when all tactics have failed?
I'm not an advocate of going outside the law to handle some of these things because, frankly, it's a recipe for anarchy. We came together and organized ourselves to live together as people, as a community. And, under the social contract, we gave the government some aspects of responsibility in terms of our rights, both fundamental and others. And so it is a responsibility of government to go ahead and prosecute any offender. One of the drivers of insecurity, including terrorism, is the inability of our justice system to arrest and punish offenders. And so this is a good opportunity, really, for all the agencies of government to show that perhaps if before the reason was because there was no mandate, now there is a mandate. And hopefully the National Assembly that has oversight functions on this security departments will also pick up on this and ensure that this departments that are under the executive go ahead and prosecute. Because remember, the National Assembly actually called for the declaration of this group as terrorists. Now that it has happened, they do have a responsibility through oversight functions to ensure that the membership of those groups, their funding generating capacity, and every other thing associated with that group, law enforcement applies to it. In addition, and this is also very important, the deterrence element within our law should play. So in other words, I expect to see a lot of advocacy, a lot of sensitization, especially by the arms of government that have responsibility for this, such as the Ministry of Information, the National Orientation Agency, and all the others, so that anyone who perhaps is thinking of either, because sometimes, unfortunately, it's even unknowingly that you contribute or you support these groups in one way or the other. So through this awareness, campaigns, advocacy, and others, people would now realize that, look, these are terrorist groups, and all the channels through which they get support would now be made open by government. And so anyone who either wittingly or unwittingly is associated with them would stop. Those that don't stop, of course, will be prosecuted. So again, I want to emphasize, it should be a responsibility of government, not ours. We shouldn't go outside the laws to seek to amend this. We've done the right thing. A court has declared them terroristic. The next thing is for their prosecution. And I think even the media, and I'm very happy you are doing this, is an aspect of the awareness and sensitization. So I'm hoping other media houses would pick up on this, generate enough attention. And then, of course, the next thing is for all the other arms of government to go ahead and do the right thing, which is to arrest or block anything associated with these groups that have been mentioned.
Well, it will be interesting to sort of see how things play out eventually. But let me quickly bring in Sheikh Ahmed Gumi, who said sometime back that bandits were not terrorists. He's actually come up with the view that that this will actually cause more problems. And he also talked about media blackmail. I wanted to gauge your reaction regarding some of the things that he said in the past and what he's actually saying now with regards to the court order, saying that it won't work. What do you say to that?
So I think it's important to emphasize that Sheikh Gumi is a cleric, is a clergyman who should be seen from that premise. He's been forced out of necessity to encroach the realm of security. Some can argue that he's got a military background, but that is it. It was a military background that he left a long time ago, and now he's a clergyman. So some of his statements, I look at it from that angle. I've had reason in a one-on-one encounter to him to advise him to disaggregate between the three elements that we seem to put together. That is the bandits, the harder, and then the criminal. Now, what the court has done is to declare certain actions that are carried out by bandits, and it has even gone ahead to name two groups that it has outrightly declared as terroristic. And the list of those items are clear. Those items that have been listed, such as kidnapping persons, such as raiding villages and killing them, or shooting down fighter jets belonging to the military, or going to communities and touching communities, those are clear terroristic act as declared by the court. And I do not think any individual who is in his right senses would contest that the actions of these groups are terroristic. Now, if, for instance, perhaps for some reason, Sheikh Gumi was not able to disaggregate between the bandits and these other groups that I've mentioned, such as the Hada militias or the criminals that are in, then maybe that's where he needs to be slightly educated to understand that there is a difference between these three groups. And he's not alone. A lot of persons within the country are not able to disaggregate between these three groups. I know it's a very difficult task, but that is why we have the law, and that is why we have security agents. It would be unfortunate, and I think we are likely to even face prosecution or even the investigation by the International Court of Justice if we do not make this distinction between these three groups. What I'm trying to say, for instance, is imagine a situation where, because there is a village and that village is believed to harbor both bandits and these criminals, and then these Fulani militias, and then the military uses its Super Tucano to go and drop a bomb and kill everybody in that village, which unfortunately has happened in the past. And so that is why I think it's important to make that distinction, disaggregate these groups, the ones that are criminal in nature, treat them under whatever criminal provision we have in our laws, the ethnic militias or hadas, as it were, whatever our laws says we should treat them. And then the ones that have been declared as terrorists by the courts, and the court was very clear about those ones, then they should be treated as terrorist groups. Again, it's not going to be an easy task. It's going to be a very difficult task. So I'm hoping that Sheikh Gumi will understand this and stop this attempt to, call something that is black.
Very good. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, security analyst, I'd like to thank you for your perspective on those issues. Good to have you. You're watching Newsday.